Greetings, and welcome to the Nerdpreneur podcast, where we interview people making money with their nerdy passions. You found the free and abridged version of this interview. If you'd like the full meal deal, as well as a backlog of other content, head on over to our Patreon, where you can join the board of Nerdpreneurs. Link is in the description below. In this interview, we spoke with comedian, writer, podcaster, and storyteller Todd A. Davis of the Computer Resume podcast. Todd is a fantastic storyteller. He's the kind of person that when you ask him a question, he's going to give you an answer in the form of a story. And we got some really good ones out of it. Some of the things that he shared that we ended up diving into revolved around his background as a comedian and how folks can get started in that, his background as a comic book writer and how other people can get started in that, as well as collaboration and the importance of it, and how collaboration can be done with people you know well or people you maybe don't know terribly well. And speaking of collaboration, we talked about contracts. And if that scares you, if the idea of having to write a contract or someday be bound to one is really intimidating, well, then you're going to enjoy this, because we talked about that and how you can go about it intelligently, because contracts are a huge part of making a business happen. So don't be shied away. And as of course, we talked a lot about Star Trek. Not a huge surprise there. I got to trek out big time. Trek out is not a verb, but it is now. So we talked a lot about that, but if you're not a Trekkie, like I said, that's all good. There's a lot of other stuff in here. And as you listen, if you find little nuggets that you like, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below, because always curious to know what you all find fascinating.
Welcome to Nerdpreneur, where we have fun conversations with people making money with their nerdy passion. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Frank.
Hello.
And today, we have a very special guest, writer, comedian, and host of the Computer Resume podcast, Todd A. Davis. Welcome to the Nerdpreneur.
Oh, Frank, Chris, thank you so much for having me on. I'm actually really excited, and I gotta admit, I'm a little nervous about coming on to talk about running a business because I'm terrible at it. So everything I've learned has been through trial and error. So
Well, one of the things we notice about nerdpreneurs is they're not always aware of the things they're good at or the things that
they're struggling
that work
with
or don't work. And you know what? We're all about being honest and authentic with our business advice. And it's hard writing a business, right? At least I've heard that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll let you know when we actually get success.
I'm in a constant state of joking about quote unquote all that podcasting money, and then I always double down with, in addition to all that stand-up comedy money. So
yes.
yeah.
Well, if there's two things that'll take you a decade to find anything in it, it's probably those two things: podcasting and stand-up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk to people who have done it for a long time, almost every one of them is like, well, invest 10 years and you might get somewhere, you know?
Yeah, I make the joke frequently that stand-up comedians are paid in cheeseburgers and encouragement. That's about it. If you see a dime, consider yourself succcel.
I always thought laughter was their food.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. You can ride high off of an audience's laughter for a good long while. But unfortunately, my Toyota Highlander does not run on laughter.
So, Todd,
yes.
What is your nerdy passion?
Well, I'm nerdy about a lot of things, but if I had to narrow it down, obviously I'm big on Star Trek. I'm really nerdy on stand-up comedy. I'm also a big comic book guy. So as I go, I'm finding that I'm nerdy about people's experiences. If we're kind of diving deeper on those things, talking with as many people as I have through my podcast, one of the things that I get really nerdy about is how this fandom, how the Star Trek fandom has affected different people. I've had on artists, comedians, actors, writers, Lego builders, and everybody comes from a different background. So it's fun to see when they watch, Wrath of Khan, how it affects them versus how it affects me versus how it affects somebody else. In terms of stand-up comedy, yeah, you go up there, you do your material. If it's well written, if it's well rehearsed, if it's well presented, you get a laugh. But a lot of people don't understand all the technical aspects of it. It's still viewed as, oh, you go up on stage and you be funny. Gosh, if it was that easy, man, I'd be rolling in money right now. But
Right.
you know, with the pandemic, and I saw this working the mics, when the pandemic happened, all the mics shut down. So veteran comics didn't have the place to go to work out their material. Not to mention, not only did the mic shut down, but all the shows shut down, all the venues shut down.
Yeah.
So after that first initial wave, when the mics started opening back up, people had been sitting at home watching stand-up on Netflix and thought, I can do that. So when they opened back up, there was a flood of new comics who thought, oh, my Netflix special is 6 months away.
Yeah.
A lot of them are not still doing stand-up.
Yeah.
But the folks that understand the give and take, the repeated rejection, the constant editing, constant rewriting, the constant performance tweaking, those folks who understand that are still doing it, are still working, and are well on their way. But I love fine-tooth combing material and finding exactly what hits and what gets that laughter. Because I can tell a joke one way, I rearrange it and change a couple of the words so that they hit your ear differently, and I get a bigger response. One of my co-hosts from Cinema Shock, Gary Horn, also works with the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, Billy Corrigan's company. And he watches my stand-up through the eyes of the wrestling industry and looks for the big pops, looks for the turns, looks for those types of things. So that's been really fascinating here recently, because I've been getting this fresh new perspective on this art that I've been doing for a number of years now.
So hold on, do you do comedic stand-up? Do you have a specific audience that's Star Trek people, also known as Trekkies?
Well, we're all about learning here. Trekkies is actually a derogatory term.
What?
So it's actually Trekkers. I had to learn this too. I had to learn this myself.
I am humbled. I consider
Frank.
myself very knowledgeable in all things Star Trek, and I did not know that Trekkies was derogatory and that it's actually Trekkers.
Yeah.
I remember a long time ago there was a documentary called Trekkers, and
it was called Trekkies. It was done by Denise Crosby, cast member from TNG, and she even did a sequel. I've heard rumors that there's a third one in the works. But yeah, I got corrected very early on, thank God, that Trekkies is technically derogatory. The preferred term is Trekkers.
Is it derogatory because it's been used as like, oh, those Trekkies, and like as an insult?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, if you fire it off, you're not going to start a nerd slap fight or anything like that. But yeah, technically the term is Trekkers. I actually got corrected by Connor Trenier, one of the series regulars from Star Trek Enterprise. He played Trip Tucker, the engineer.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And he informed me, because I had been referring to the era of Star Trek that includes TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. I had been referring to that as the TNG era.
Ooh.
He corrected me and said, actually, we're called Legacy Trek.
I was going to ask, because I thought that was like phase 2, where phase 1 was original series, and that would be called phase 2. And that was actually a question I wanted to ask you, because now we're in like phase 3, essentially.
Well, technically, so phase 2 is actually a thing. Phase 2 was meant to be the next Star Trek show after the original series. And a lot of those ideas, I think, got absorbed either into the animated series or the novels or worked into a couple of the movie scripts.
I see.
And but it's largely fan driven, and I think you can find phase 2 on YouTube.
I see.
But the stuff with Discovery, starting with Discovery, which includes Discovery, Picard, Prodigy, Lower Decks, and
Strange New Worlds.
That is what is referred to as New Trek. New Trek.
Well, for our listeners, this is obviously going to be a very Star Trek heavy episode. So if that is not your cup of tea, still hang around. Yeah, buckle in, because we're still going to be talking about business. Yeah, Chris is going to be here, despite he might sound like he's not at times.
I've been like, but the whole Trekker. Am I right on that? Trekker? Okay.
Trekker, so for all those,
this sounds like such a West Coast Comic-Con thing. I just am like wondering when we look at the Trekkie, say, term that was put on the movie, was there an uproar about that? Because there's been multiple movies in the Trekkie universe, and it should have been Trekker, apparently.
Well, and I think there is a great interview that Denise Crosby gave to Shuttlepod Show, which is on YouTube. It's hosted by Connor Trenier, Dominic Keating, who was also a cast member of Enterprise. They also have Erica LaRose, an actress working out in LA, and Marc Cartier is the producer, who's got a bunch of producing credit. He's got an IMDb with movies you've heard of. We'll put it that way.
Gotcha.
But he's the producer of the show, and they bring in Connor and Dominic have, of course, met tons of Star Trek actors and below the line technical folks that have worked on Star Trek, and they bring them in one at a time for kind of a tell-all interview, a fun interview. And they had Denise Crosby in there, and she gave all the details about Trekkies, about the production of Trekkies, that first documentary. It was kind of her perspective, because at the time, nerd culture was not mainstream yet. So different sects of nerd fandom were still kind of looked down upon. But she wanted to explore the lives of these people. And I'm paraphrasing, of course. It's a wonderful interview. Highly recommend it. But she was saying, you know what? These people are very creative. They're very passionate. Why does society at large feel a particular way about these people? So let's get into it. And it was, and it went on to do very well. And yeah, and she talks about all the production, during the actual filming, and of course post-production, and how it was received by the studios and the community at large. Did well enough to get a sequel, and like I said, there's rumors of a third one coming, so we'll see.
So I'm curious about, not to get off Star Trek, because I know how much we want to stay there, but
listen, I can talk about a lot of different things at length, so I'm prepared to bounce around, fellas.
Well, I'm curious, how long have you been doing stand-up? Because I'm more of a stand-up nerd, actually.
Oh, that's great. I started stand-up, I want to say around 2014. Think.
Okay, so you weren't one of these COVID comedians who came out of there and said, I can do that. That's okay. I'm going to be the next Dave Chappelle. But in fact, you've been doing this for a while. So I'm curious, how long from a stand-up perspective till you feel like, okay, I'm good enough to go up and do like a 5 or a 10 or something like that?
Well, I'll give you the rundown from the top. I was actually working on a comic book at the time. I enjoyed the art of stand-up. I really appreciated the artistry of it, but really didn't have much of a drive to pursue it myself. I was working at a college at the time in security. I mentioned off mic that I have a law enforcement background, and that's a whole different other story. But wound up working at a college in Florida, and there was a young woman there that worked in financial aid. as I'm walking around checking different departments, I, meet everybody. Hey, how you doing? My name is Todd. Da 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 da. And I see her drawing one day. I was like, "Oh, you're an artist." She said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Are you?" And I kind of threw up the nerd flag. I was like, "Nerd, one of us?" And she's like, "Oh yes, one of us." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And so we kind of connected. We became friends. And I saw her sketching a little dinosaur one day, and I was like, "Oh, that's a cute little dinosaur." She goes, "Yeah, it's kind of my signature little doodle character." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. The only thing I can draw is a skeleton." I grabbed a little scratch sheet of paper. I doodled this little skeleton in a top hat and with a cane and the whole thing. She was like, "Oh, that's really cute. We should make the skeleton and the dinosaur do something together." I'm like, "Okay." Your shift over. She was like, "Oh, a few hours." I was like, "Okay, I'll see you around in a little bit." I went back to my office, grabbed a couple more sheets of paper, and I wrote the first script for the first Adventures on Earth with Adam and Steve. It is basically Calvin and Hobbes with more Bible jokes. Basically, Adam, the first man, goes to sleep or wakes up, realizes he's alive, and is immediately eaten by a dinosaur. So now he's left as this walking, talking skeleton, and the dinosaur actually becomes kind of his best friend. But the dinosaur can only say one word, and it's roar. And so they end up exploring this new place called Earth and this new thing called life, and just gave me a bunch of opportunity. My father was a Baptist minister. I have had some family members come out, in more recent years. So and again, I enjoy comedy. So I was able to kind of mush it all into this one thing called The First Adventures on Earth with Adam and Steve. It was all very, good natured, fun, just kind of let's poke fun at everything and everybody. Just kind of look at life through fresh eyes. In fact, the freshest eyes, brand new eyes. The Garden of Eden is portrayed as a nightclub.
Nice.
Satan, the devil, is portrayed as a used car salesman. God actually looks like the Big Lebowski. He's got a t-shirt. He's got a t-shirt on that says "I got this." Awesome. We have the first woman appear, Lilith. Lilith is actually the crazy ex-girlfriend.
Right.
And then Eve is a blonde who's looking at a rock and scrolling on a rock because she doesn't want to look or talk to Adam, has no interest in Adam at all until she meets the dinosaur, and the dinosaur is the cutest dog she's ever seen. So that's how he gets with Eve.
I was just going to ask if Steve played that like dog at the park role, and that's
very much.
Yeah. Got it. Nice. Nice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We actually ended up doing it on Facebook every 2 weeks for a year. And at the end of it, we collected everything, and then we did a couple of brand new things that hadn't been released, and we took it to Kickstarter, and we set a goal of $1,000. Oh. We raised a little over 1,300.
Nice.
And then I'm very old school, very analog, so I sat at home cold calling stores, going, "Hey, my name is Todd Davis. I'm a independent writer. I've got this new comic book. I'd like to get it into your store." Fuck myself. Okay, thanks very much. Have a good one. And then call the next place. Hi. And, lather, rinse, repeat. So it's, which that actually came in handy getting into stand-up comedy. So while we were working on Adam and Steve at the college.
So you had some practice with rejection is what you're saying.
Bingo.
Because of the phone, I used to do direct sales phone calling over and over and over again. So I understand the callus you can develop from calling many, many, many people on the side of your ear and getting rejected to get in the door. I actually, before we move on to where the stand-up comes in, I'm curious though, because that's really cool that you got your, I wanted to ask about like when you did that calling over and over and over again, did you learn some strategies for cold calling that were effective for people to actually like, listen to you and then actually get through to, yeah, sure, bring it over. I'll take a X number of copies of your comic or something?
Yeah, because, and again, if I had it all to do over again today, I would take a different approach. But for something specifically like that, a mom and pop brick and mortar comic book store isn't just going to be like, okay, yeah, send us 20 copies. That's not going to happen. They're going to say, can you send us a sample? Or can you send us a copy? I had an artist to pay. So I was like, I can't really send you a copy. However, I do have JPEGs of 3 of the strips. So I would send them, hey, here's a couple strips. Here's the cover image. It's me and my partner. It's we got 44 pages, full color. It's priced what a 44-page color comic would be priced. We did our research on that end. And we also knew that most comic stores are used to getting a certain percent from the distributor. So we also knew that we had to match that as well. What I didn't account for was selling them in bundles of 20 because they came from the printer in bundles of 20. I was like, okay, yeah, this will be fine. Mm-hmm. Mom and pop brick and mortar store, they want to call the shots in terms of how many they get, which is fine, but you have to be prepared for that of like, yes, we would like to bring your book. We want 5 copies. Okay, no problem.
So 20 is
and you got to, yeah, 20 is a lot, especially for a no-name independent phone call deal. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I tried to sweeten the pot a little bit of I'll deliver them myself. I'll do a bunch of social media posts. While I'm there in your store, I'll sign all the copies. So now you've got autographed copies to sell. If you want to bump on the price, bump them up because they're autographed, go for it. But yeah, I think learning some of that stuff, and to be honest, for comic book creators, or I've seen that the same process works for independent third-party TTRPG creators. If you're writing an adventure, if you're writing a source book, the sales tactics are very similar. Mm-hmm. Now, with everything that's happened recently with the OGL and everything that went down there,
right,
stores are actually, I think, more inclined than ever to get on board with an independent creator, as long as that creator is willing to play ball with the store. Same rules apply. I'm not going to buy a bundle of 20. I'll buy 3, I'll buy 4, maybe 5. Mm-hmm. And if it works, we'll call you and order more. And that's, you got to, as a creator / salesperson, you have to be okay with that. It's like, oh, we'd really like to get 20. They're going to hang up on you.
Right.
So it's take what you can get. And then you got to hit the road. If you're doing it old school, you got to hit the road. If you're looking to get a hard copy into a store and you don't want to spend shipping, okay, well then it's you in a car with a box full of stuff in your trunk. Like, That's the name of the game. You got to pound pavement, as they say. And yeah, that's, so the comic book TTRPG sales to the independent stores, if you're not doing the digital route, which, don't get me wrong, the digital route is really the way to go. Sell PDFs of it. Make money hand over fist. Get yourself a ISBN and sell it on Amazon and sit at home and collect money. But there's still that element of, I want to see my name on the cover of a book that's on the shelf of a store.
Right.
There's something about that.
I did it with social media too, honestly.
Very.
Like if you put it up there, it gives you this level of credibility when you can get through the barrier of a store, because it's all through distribution companies, and a lot of people believe that, like, well, that's for professionals, and it's like, I'm just this independent whatever. But in actuality, you could probably get your way into a store if you do the right things and talk the right talk. to be able to get past that. And then all of a sudden you've got yourself in amongst some of the best creators. It's going to only increase your authority, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And, and there's nothing wrong with getting in with your local comic book store and saying, hey, would you be willing to partner with me and help get the word out? I've got to, you've got to take a % off to get it in the store anyway. Hell, take a little bit more if they agree to plug it on social media. I can almost guarantee you, if you get with one of these stores that happens to be running a local convention in your area, their reach goes way beyond your social media more often than not. And that way, selling your book to an individual is great. Selling a bundle of books to a retailer, even better, because they'll do the legwork for you. And at that point, they'll say, hey, we'd like to bring you in for a signing. Now you can negotiate an appearance fee. That's
and how many copies you're going to sell too, right? Or how many copies they want for the sale. So that's where they'll be like, oh, well, we do want 30 copies or 50 or whatever it's going to be for this special appearance. This is interesting from the perspective of kind of like how to get started and kind of hustle your way into the comic book market a bit. Is that the only comic you've done? It sounds like this is one of a few things, or have you done other writing too?
It is the one that is finished, done, and available for purchase if you can find them. We only got we did a limited run. It was our first book, so it is out there in the world. It is not the only thing that I have written, but it is the closest. It is the largest success of something I've.
It is on the shelves, people.
It's on the shelves. If you can find it, then snatch it up, because there's not many of them out there.
All right, so how did this tie into
Epic Magic Item Hunt?
Yeah, how did this tie into stand-up?
Okay, so while I'm making Adam and Steve, I'm working at the college. I noticed that the English department is having a local comedian come in and give a couple of seminars to the kids. One about writing. It's a writing seminar, and after the writing seminar, they do. The local comedian ran a public speaking seminar as well. So for the kids who attend the writing seminar and the public speaking seminar, they have the opportunity to, throughout the day, write their own material and then perform at the end of the night. So in the midst of writing Adam and Steve, I thought to myself, you know what? I have no experience in writing comedy, but I do love comedy. It would probably be really great for me to sit in on a seminar about comedic writing.
Yeah.
So I go up to the English professor who's putting it on, and I say, hey, I'm doing this thing with this comic book. I have no experience in comedic writing. I'd like to just sit in on a comedic writing seminar, if that's cool. And yeah, and you can also do the public speaking one as well. I said, well, I have an acting background and stuff like that. And I don't know that I'll use that, but you know what? To complete the experience, yeah, I'll sit in on both. And the English professor said, oh, and you want to participate in the show afterwards, right? I was like, no, I really don't. And she said, oh, come on, it's going to be a lot of fun. I was like, I hear you. I understand what you're trying to say. I have no interest in doing that. Oh, come on. You're going to have a good time. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. You'll have a fun time. Come on, let's do it. All right, fine. So the day comes, I go to the writing seminar, I jot a couple things down, go to the public speaking seminar, jot a few more things down, and a few hours go by, and now it's time for the show. And it's all these kids, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, and here this cop in his early 30s. And the first person goes up. Okay, I might be up next. Second person goes up. All right, I'm sure I'm up there somewhere. Third person, fourth person, fifth person, sixth person. They keep going. Okay, folks, your final comedian for the night. I was like, am I headlining? What is going on here? It's like, okay, I've written a couple of jokes that I think are solid in terms of content, format, structure, the whole thing. And I have a decent stage presence. I think this might work. I go up on stage, I do my stuff. Seems like it's going well. It's kind of hard to judge that while you're trying to work. I do it. All right. Thank you so much. My name is Todd A Davis. Good night. I turn to leave as the comedian who's been hosting the thing all day is coming back up on stage. He shakes my hand, leans in and says, "Don't run off." Okay. I stick around backstage and they said, "Okay, now we're going to bring up your top comedians for the night and everybody's going to vote." And that's when it sunk in that this wasn't a show. It was a contest.
Oh.
I was like, oh no. So I think he split the group in half. So it's me and like six or, five of these other kids. They're kids. And here I am, the guy that works in security up there with these kids. He does the host holds his hand over the head. So it's vote with your applause.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up winning the competition. Wow. I won Jester of the Semester as the guy who works in security. They brought me a ridiculous sized bouquet of flowers. Whoa. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I'll say this, I beat the girl in the wheelchair.
Oh no.
Yeah, I felt absolutely horrible because she, in my opinion, had the best joke of the night. And she and I are Facebook friends to this day. She's very, very nice, very sweet, very funny. But she rolled up in her wheelchair, took the mic, set the stand aside like you're supposed to do. And the first thing out of her mouth was, "You'll forgive me if I don't get up." Hysterical. It folded everybody. I was just like, that is so brilliant. Like, and so ended up giving her the bouquet and just, I was just like, hey, look, you had the best joke of the night and the whole thing. So that's part one of this story.
Okay.
Part of winning the contest was you also got 5 minutes at the local open mic. Typically, new comedians get 3 minutes at best.
This is like extortion. I feel like they're extorting you into comedy as opposed to actually getting you into comedy.
Yeah.
It's like, if you win this, you have to go do this.
So I was like, okay, I've got 5 minutes at this open mic. I know I'm smarter than the average bear. I'm going to go to a different local open mic and practice one time before I cash in my 5 minute set. Smart, right?
Yeah.
Work it out.
So I show up at this bar / pool hall place, and they've actually got a side room with a stage, bunch of tables and chairs, the whole thing. I get there early. Room starts filling up. Now the room is full. And I think one comedian went up and they said, "Okay, please welcome to the stage. We got some fresh blood in tonight. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Todd A Davis." Applause. I walk up and I'm ready. I've got my opener. I've got 3 bits. Each bit has 3 jokes. I've got a solid closer. I'm like, man, I'm going to knock this out of the park. I just won this contest
against a bunch of kids.
Meanwhile,
against a bunch of
kids who had never done comedy, and at the end of all of that, you were the one guy who had done comedy enough.
You literally took the ice cream out of the little kid's hand.
It was like,
yeah, exactly.
If I'd have seen 16 bad comedians before you went up, I think I probably would have been like, thank God someone up there.
Thank God there's somebody who understands what he's doing. Yeah. But just wait. There's more. This story's about to take a turn. So I get up, hey everybody, and I do my opening line. Crickets. Nothing. I was like, okay, maybe it's just the opener. So I do another opener. Crickets. I'm like, okay, maybe the openers don't work. Let's go into the first bit. I go into the first bit. First joke of the first bit, crickets. Second joke of the first bit, crickets. At that point, I go, well, none of this is working. I slap the microphone back in the stand and I go, thanks, bye. I walk off stage. The host, who was not prepared for me to do that, runs back up on stage, grabs the mic and goes, "Hey, you've got like 4 minutes and 40 seconds left." I go, "Well, none of this is working." And the host said, "Is this your first time?" I said, "It might as well be." And that made the entire room erupt in laughter. I was like, fuck every single one of you.
Was it a haze essentially?
So
no,
here's what happened.
That's how comedy works. It works in failure.
No, I get that part, but here's something more.
Here's what actually happened. I get to the back of the room, and there's the comedian that hosted the event at the college. He goes, "Hey, Todd, good to see you. Didn't realize you'd be, here tonight." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I saw what just happened." I go, "Yeah, man. I thought stuff was good." He goes, "Listen, you see that table right over there? Those 3 people sitting there?" "Yeah." He goes, "Those are the only people in this room that aren't comedians. Comedians don't laugh at jokes." I was like, "Oh, okay. All right. I get it now." I was like, it wasn't hazing. They were looking at me going, "Oh," and they were giving me the honest comedian response, which is, "Oh, see."
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't laugh. I was like, "Well, God, I wish I would have known this. I had 4 minutes and 40 seconds left."
Oh man.
Oh my gosh.
So I got the best experience and the worst experience like within 24 hours of each other. And from there on, I was just kind of like, okay, if it works, great. If not, learn from it, go back to the drawing board and try again. So that was my introduction into stand-up comedy.
I've heard Jerry Seinfeld say that comedians is the most judged profession. Every 6 seconds, you're basically judged on whether or not you can keep people laughing, right? So I'm curious about something. I want to get into something because there's a writer, podcaster, comedian, everything that you've been able to create some level of success in and move forward with. It feels like you've had to kind of go forward, bump your head a little bit, go forward, bump your head a little bit more, right? And learn from those bumps and bruises that get you there. But you didn't quit. And that's really interesting to me because a lot of people quit and a lot of people have thin skin when they go out there and try and do stuff. And, you don't, it seems. I'm really curious. Do you have advice for people around not quitting and whether, and how to either, and also how to maintain a thicker skin in the pursuit of something you're passionate about?
I think for something like stand-up comedy and to a degree, podcasting, and even writing, they tell you when you're done with your first draft, read it, enjoy it, throw it away, because that is not going to be the last draft. It never is. It never is. So if you're able to learn how to cut stuff and edit your own stuff, that's great. That's really going to help you in terms of writing. Stand-up comedy, same thing. Like you're going to get rejection a lot. In fact, I can sit here and write jokes all day. It's not until I get in front of an audience that's when the editing process begins, because I deliver the material and now I'm getting honest feedback in real time. So if you're able to pay attention to the feedback and okay, I got to work on that bit. I got to work on that bit. That bit works. So we got to keep that. And now we know that's why a lot of comedians end up filming themselves, end up recording themselves audio. So they can hear themselves, but they're also hearing the audience. And, in terms of podcasting, I've been at this for a little over 2 years. I think I'm decent at it. If you go back and listen to episode 1, episode 2, episode 3 versus episode 94, 95, 96, they are worlds apart. Some of this stuff you can't learn in school. You just can't. There's certain things you can learn, but when it comes to practical application, you got to get out there. And like I mentioned earlier, being able to look at your own accomplishments is one of the ways that you stay encouraged to keep going. I may write 10 bits. So I've got 10 bits of comedy that I think are really solid. I go to a mic. I do them. 3 of them work. That's pretty rough. So I could look at it one way. It's like, oh man, 30% of my stuff worked. God, I worked really hard on this stuff. Or 30% worked. Now I've got room to create more. You know, in terms of podcasting, there's a quote out there that says, hey, look, most podcasts don't make it past episode 3. And even fewer podcasts make it past episode 20. So when I recently realized, oh, I'm at episode 90 something, I was like, I must be doing something right. So a lot of times it's looking for, look for the thing that you are doing right. It may be one thing. And then you can say, okay, maybe I'm not the best joke writer. Maybe my stage presence needs work. Maybe I don't have the money or the means to get really good podcasting equipment or software. Maybe I love comics, but my dialogue writing skills aren't up to snuff, or I don't know how to write art direction or something like that. But I've got a great concept. So now with podcasting, it's okay, but I had a really great discussion. Or with stand-up comedy, you know what? I've got this one joke that works. If you focus on what you do have, you will be encouraged to work on the rest, because you've got the one. Now let's get 2. And when I did that comedy writing and comedy stage presence seminar there at that college in Florida, that's what the comedian was trying to hammer in. It was like, look, you guys are not going to be able to do 30, 45, an hour's worth of comedy right now. It's not going to happen. What you're looking to do is build 3 minutes. If you can build 3 minutes, then you're off to a good start. You know, podcasting, you're looking for 3 episodes. Then you're looking for 20. With stand-up, it was build a 3-minute set. Okay, now build a 5-minute set. Now build a 7-minute set. If you guys have watched comedians in cars getting coffee, I always point new comedians to the episode with Judd Apatow, because he left college because he was already working in the industry that he wanted to work in, and he was interviewing these comedians for his school newspaper. He just kept doing that. And through interviewing all these comedians, he kind of learned the formula. You're not going to be good at this for 7 years. A lot of people who were sitting at home during the pandemic watching comedy on Netflix saw Taylor Tomlinson and her first special, Quarter Life Crisis. 25 years old, comes out and sticks the landing like a boss. They're like, she's 25. Oh man, I can do this. What they didn't see was the 10, 12, 15 years that she was busting ass in clubs around the country, building, reworking, rewriting, working all of that stuff out. It does not happen overnight. Mm-hmm. Same thing with podcasting. You record an episode, you edit it, put in your sound effects, put in your music, whatever you've got going on. You got yourself a decent logo, you put it out in the world. Congratulations. Now do it again. You know, we see a lot of comedians come to that open mic and bomb. The big question looming is, will we see you next week? Because it's easy to do. If you're looking to check something off a bucket list of like, hey, I did stand-up comedy. You performed at an open mic. Let's see you do it again next week. Comics. Comics is tough because now it's a collaboration. You know, with podcasting, for the most part, if you're working with somebody, there's give and take. You know, maybe somebody has the marketing marketing know-how, and the other person has the production know-how, and you're able to work together. But for a lot of podcasters, it's one person with a microphone sitting in a room by themselves, putting their thoughts and words into the universe. I'm lucky that I have a financially minded spouse who is absolutely brilliant. And I could not do my podcast without her going, hey, that's a great idea, but have you considered X, Y, and Z? Right. Like, oh, you know what? I didn't think of that. So in terms of producing the show, it's me. Like, I've got a guy who made my logo, and I got permission to use some music because I asked a local musician. Other than that, I book the guests, I write the scripts, I set up the calls, I record, I edit, all of that stuff. It's me. So when it comes to comics, now, because I can't draw to save my life, I'm relying on my artist. For a writer, it might be hard right off the bat to understand, like, my words are only going to be read by one person. So I have to be able to work with this person to get the final product. So I feel like I'm starting to get on a soapbox and go off on a tangent. So did I answer the question?
Yeah, there was a lot of good gold in there, actually, I thought. And I was going to say, I actually have this theory, and I think that the more I hear these types of stories, the more I begin to believe it, that there really is no such thing as like talent. There is only the hard work and skill that comes through that. Because, it's funny how almost everybody who they say has been brilliant, right? Take someone like Bob Dylan, for example, right? Brilliant songwriter, highly recognized throughout all of his life, has been recognized as brilliant, right? And some of his most brilliant work, they discovered a notebook that he had where he had literally written every song over and over different ways until he found the perfect way, in a sense, to actually create that whole album. And there was a lot of speculation around the idea that, this kind of just came out of him after this breakup, and this came out of him at this time of his life, because it was like, but in actuality, there's no such thing as that. There is a striking of inspiration, I think, but then there's the work that goes behind it that consistently makes it better. And I think there really is no fast track past that, as you mentioned. The idea that you can just dive in and be brilliant at something, I think, is a very new and modern concept that people that social media really propagates, because I just put one video out and I can go viral, and all of a sudden I'm famous and I'm good and I'm known as this person who's really good at this one thing. Like, all of a sudden that can all happen in an instant. But that's a myth, right? Even Mr. Beast, the guy who essentially moneyballed YouTube, he talks about his journey upwards took him, X number of years. Now he makes like 70 or 80 videos a year, but he talks about how it's a whole lot more interesting and it's a whole lot more practical to put a ton of time into making that one video go to 10 million people versus doing like 10 million videos. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
That go to one person or two. So I think there's a lot in there that you mentioned that was really, really cool and valuable.
Keep in mind that, when you hear these stories about, first of all, I think the big one is there is no such thing as an overnight success. I think Kevin Hart said, it took me 10 years to become an overnight success. Mm-hmm. Looking at folks who, again, I'm on this movie podcast, Cinema Shock, where we cover cult and genre film history. It's a lot of fun. Available now wherever you get your
nice.
But one of the things that we cover is the process of the production from top to tails. So when you hear that so and so wrote this award-winning screenplay in 10 days or 2 weeks, that's an amazing story. Look at all the stuff that they went through in their life before they sat down to write that screenplay. I bet it wasn't all sunshine and roses. Like there was a lot of work, probably a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of rejection, a lot of trial and error. And, it's good to realize like, oh, I'm not okay. Yeah, I might not crank it out in a day, or I might not crank it out in a week or a month, and that's okay. Like at the end of the day, I think if you're creating art, then you as the artist got to be satisfied with the work you created, and understanding that work is the stepping stone to the next piece. When you create a podcast, at the end of the day, hey, we've got a deadline. We put it out there. But now I kind of know what to expect in terms of how my equipment works and how the editing process goes. And okay, the music's going to go here. And now I'm changing my game plan in terms of my script. And hey, the sound effects are going to go here. And these are questions that my guest had that I am probably going to have to address with the next guest. So I should probably write those down.
Yeah.
It's a learning process. You have to continuously learn. You have to continuously grow. If you're not, then you're not progressing. You're not growing. You're not going to get better. There are so few prodigies. You just can't bank on that. Like you can't bank that you're just going to be the next Bo Burnham, or you're going to be the next, in terms of podcasting, Mark Maron or Joe Rogan. Like you're not going to have Joe Rogan set up tomorrow. Sorry, folks.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen.
It's so
you're
true.
not going to have 2 researchers and thousands of dollars worth of equipment to make. You're not going to get to sit down across from Robert Downey Jr. Like it's not going to happen. But what you can do is talk to your friends, and then you can talk to someone you met at a convention, or hey, I met this comedian at the club. Maybe I can work with them, or maybe they'll talk to me for a few minutes on the mic, or get a tip or a trick from them. It's how you gather all these pieces to put together your own puzzle of success, because no one can see the picture except you. It's up to you to put that together so that you can show someone else.
Yeah, what you're saying is really important, and I wanted to kind of circle back a little while ago, though, the importance I'm hearing of patience and enjoying the journey and enjoying the process and getting there. And I make videos in my day job, and so much of it is iteration, and just getting better and learning what steps need to be added to the process. I mean, that's something that Chris and I do a lot also, is just what needs to be added. And like you said, this is where the sound effects go. I mean, I was listening to one of your more recent episodes, and your intro is very well put together. Like that has clearly, like, when I listen to it, I think, okay, this has been through the ringer. This has been through iteration after iteration, and it is that enjoying of the experience. Now, you had mentioned, I kind of want to, there's a lot of things I want to ask, but I'm going to try to narrow this down for a second. You've talked about,
fellas, I got all night. You ask away, man.
Well, I want to focus on you talk about patience, and you talk about, the joy of it, and the thing that gets me is so much of this at the end of the day that we nerds struggle to do sometimes is to remember the dollars. And as much as we don't want to have to worry about the dollars, I personally, I openly admit Chris is the guy who thinks about the dollars. I am the guy that thinks about like other things. And so as far as what you've done, I mean, all these different aspects in these different enterprises that you've taken, excuse the pun, but the different enterprises you've taken, what kind of money-based wisdom have you learned along the way to think, oh, I got to remember to get money here somehow, or I forgot money isn't a part of the equation this time? Where for you, what nuggets have you found as far as making money with many different enteprises?
Because you said you're full-time doing this kind of stuff too, right? It's not really like you're no longer a police officer, as you mentioned, or law enforcement. So how does that work?
Well, that means that my spouse has a really great job with a really no. No,
that's what we've been doing wrong, Frank. What's going on? Damn it, we've been marrying poor. Damn it.
No. Honestly, you in terms of how to handle the finances, it is tricky, and I am not financially minded. That is why I do consider myself very lucky to have a spouse who has worked in finance and financial dealings ever since she got out of college. So, and we work really well together because we've kind of named ourselves. I'm the idea man. He's the nuts and bolts girl. And we work. I come up with the big idea, which is great. Okay, we've got this. Can we find somewhere in the middle to meet? Or, okay, what's the closest we can get with this amount of resources? And with the understanding of, okay, we're going to do it this way with this amount of resources. If we can bring in this, then we get to do it again now with this amount of resources. So it's a building, you got to build it from the ground up. And that means you got to build it with what you've got to work with. You look at filmmakers like Robert Rodriguez, who, making Spy Kids, making Sin City, all of these things. He started with El Mariachi. But before that, he started by giving his body to a scientific experiment to get the funding. He's got a great book out there for folks who are looking to either be inspired or who are looking to kind of, understand what getting into the film industry takes. And it's called Rebel Without a Crew. And he tells the story of having this idea and having a camera as a kid and shooting his family members and friends doing fun things and really wanting to make a movie. He had no money, but he had to figure out what he did have. He had a guitar, he had a camera, I think he had access to a bus, and that was about it. So he heard about this scientific experiment where he would go into isolation for, I think it was isolation for 15 days or 30 days or something like that. But at the end of the experiment, he would get like $5,000 or $10,000 or somewhere in the middle, something like that. So he did that while he was in isolation. He made the most of his time and wrote the script. So at the end of the experiment, he had the script and he had his funding. And now he also had his guitar and access to a bus. And if you watch El Mariachi, every penny is on that screen. It's not bad, but you know what? That was the starting point. From there, that got noticed and was successful enough that he was able to get Selma Hayek and Antonio Banderas and make Desperado. That became a cult hit. He was able to get involved with Quentin Tarantino and make Once Upon a Time in Mexico and From Dusk Till Dawn and a bunch of other really great things. And of course, while he's doing that, he's learning the art of filmmaking, and he sets up Troublemaker Studios, which is run out of his house, out of his garage. It became one of the most successful independent film studios, and it's just based in his garage in Austin. You can do this stuff. You absolutely can do this stuff if you set your mind to it.
So
I feel like I've gone off the rails again.
No.
Did I answer your question?
So far, I've heard marry rich and also sell your body to science. So I'm ready to be successful now.
Well, so let's get into the nitty gritty of it, folks, because that is kind of, okay, I can do stand up, I can do a podcast, I can write a comic book. But how do I make money with it? First of all, it's all the advice that you got as a kid. Save your money, keep receipts, be organized, all of these things, pay your bills on time. It's all of the advice you got as a kid that you didn't want to listen to. It all comes back around of just like, oh, I should probably keep those statements that come in the mail every month. and oh, you know what? I did spend so much on this particular thing. It was for the show, so I need to keep the receipt. Did I keep the receipt? Where did I put that receipt? Damn it. You know, other things like, oh, you know what? This particular Star Trek event wants me to come out to LA to do a thing. They're going to pay me through reimbursement, which means now I've got to figure out how I'm going to get to LA. So that means I've got to set up my LLC. You know, setting up the LLC is not super hard. It's, you know, depending on what state you live in, you know, fill out a couple, you know, a form or two plus, you know, 25, 30, 40, 50 bucks, whatever, you know, whatever it costs. And congratulations, you own a business.
I'm curious more like, how did you get someone to pay you to go to an event? That's the revenue, right? Like,
yeah, they saw my work. They saw my work and they liked what I was doing.
So and
they said, hey,
at what point, like how many episodes in did that happen?
Let's see. That was I was 80 some episodes in, I think. You know, and at the time when I started the podcast, I started Computer Resume podcast. I was doing it while working a full-time job. I was a paralegal at a small firm here in town. And so every spare moment that I wasn't working on a case or running to the courthouse or, you know, doing gopher type errands for the lawyer, I was sitting there making notes for the podcast, prepping the next script, booking the next guest through social media, you know, and all that stuff. So really burning the candle at both ends. When that job got to a point where it was time for me to go, now I'm able to, I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to have all this time to dedicate to it. And, you know, it's going to be so much easier because now this is what I'm doing full time. You've got even less time because now this is all you're focused on. And when this is all you're focused on every little detail. So again, getting back to how the money comes in, you've got to be super organized and you have to value yourself. You know, being organized will help you keep track of things, but that may only entail you watching money go out the window. So you have to value yourself and your product. If you value your product and you value yourself, when you put those two together of like, hey, I value my time and I value this thing, be it a podcast or this comic book script or, this comedy set that I'm trying to build. You know, when you value your time and you value your art and you put yourself into that, somebody's going to notice. Eventually, somebody's going to notice. And hopefully you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You know, I'm doing the stand-up. I've got the comic book thing. But the podcasting seems to be really going well, and I'm able to crank it out every week. So that's where I'm putting, you know, having to, you know, I talk about being an editor when it comes to writing. You also have to be an editor with your own time of like, hey, I love stand-up comedy. I love working on comic books. Podcast thing is really blowing up. So let's scale this back a little bit and put the prime focus here. Now I still do stand-up. Now the money I get from stand-up goes to fund the podcast, you know, and that the podcast is what gets me noticed by folks who say, hey, we're doing a Star Trek event out in LA. We're doing a Star Trek event in Iowa, or we're doing a Star Trek event wherever. We'd like you to host. Great. I'm a stand-up comedian. I can do this, no problem. But you say, hey, look, it's going to cost. I live in South Carolina. LA is a long trip.
Yeah.
Most of the time, if you put that out there, and if you're conducting yourself professionally, hopefully they're conducting themselves professionally as well. And they say, hey, you know what? We've got a limited budget. We're going to take care of you. Or, hey, you know what? We've got a lot of resources. We've got you. Not a problem. Great. Right. But you have to say, hey, look, I value myself. I value my time. I value my art. That price is X. If you can meet it, great. I'll see you there. If not, hey, no worries, not a problem. When you get there next year or a few years down the line, give me a call. Let me know. Or if my situation changes, it doesn't hurt my business finances to take that one on the chin, then I'll come out. But there needs to be that view of, hey, this is going to be beneficial for not only me, not only for my art, but for my business. Is me going out there, is me going to wherever to do my performance, for me to put myself out there and my work out there, is that going to translate into downloads, Patreon support, merchandise purchases? I mean, is that going to translate? Hopefully it does. And it may take a couple of trial and errors, but you know what? Get yourself an LLC. Go get yourself a business credit card and stay on top of it. Whatever money comes in, be smart about it. Pay your bills on time. Keep track of your receipts. Keep track of your statements. Know when the next bill is coming out. I get this stuff goes right to my phone. My phone is on my hip 24/7, man. So it all comes back to, you got to value yourself, because when I see that is a real problem with comedians, because like I said, comedians are known for getting paid in cheeseburgers and encouragement. They don't know how to value themselves. It's easier for a podcaster to sort of gauge their time, because they know, okay, we're recording for 2 hours. That means I'm going to have to edit for at least twice as long. So now we're talking 6 hours. If I've got a regular 9 to 5, how much am I making at my 9 to 5? I need to be making at least that, if not more, to make it worth it. So that's now you've got some numbers to work with. I'm looking at, I'm still building this thing. I started the podcast, and I think early last year is when I got the LLC, and I think earlier this year is when I got my my business credit card. So you build it slowly over time, and understand businesses take time to be successful. Just like comedy, just like podcasts, just like writing a comic book. It does not happen overnight. You got to be prepared for, okay, we're gonna have to tighten the belt for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. If we want to make a real go at this, that's what it takes. And being able to reconcile that in your own mind and say, okay, when I went to get my business credit card, I had to take account of how much money is coming in based on Patreon supporters, based on investments that I've made myself into my own business with the money I make from stand-up comedy. Okay, this is how much is coming in on a monthly basis. The credit card company goes, okay, you're approved for X. That's what you've got to work with. So now, okay, that's okay. So if I got to fly somewhere, I got to make sure that I can cover that. I'm going to get reimbursed. So you got to keep track of your expenses. It's not just the flight. It's the flight, it's the hotel, food, Uber. Like, unless you're sleeping at the airport, which I don't recommend sleeping at LAX. Not a good idea.
I don't recommend Kansas City Airport either. It's terrible.
Okay, quick story. I have learned that I cannot get high and travel. Are we allowed to discuss this?
Yeah.
I got high before this interview. I've already
dropped at least 2 F-bombs.
Yeah, no, okay. This is fine. I'm in Washington. He's in Vancouver, Canada.
This is Vancouver, Canada. If we weren't at least if I hadn't had a joint at least at some point today, it would be it wouldn't be a good podcast.
Wonderful. So I on Frank? My way.
No, maybe. Just in case any of our listeners are wondering, I don't always do the podcast high, but for this one I said, I'm going to get a little high. He's a comedian. This is about Star Trek, and I'm pretty sure Frank's got this one. He's the Trekkie among the two of us. I'll let them riff a little bit and go down some Trekkie rabbit holes, and then I'll bring it back. But
yeah,
let's listen. I want to hear another story. Let's hear this story.
so here's the thing. This was my first the trip recently to LA was my first big business trip. I was going out there specifically to work at a Star Trek event. While I was out there, I knew that a buddy of mine lived out there. He had a podcast. I was like, okay, I'm going to go on his podcast and make a live appearance on, another show. Another friend of mine, stand-up comedian, moved out there a few years ago. She directed me to a local room. I was like, okay, I'm going to go work this Star Trek event. I'm going to do some stand-up. I'm going to do my buddy's podcast and then go to the airport. So in the midst of all of that, one of the venues that the Star Trek event was taking place was right across from a fairly large dispensary. Being from South Carolina, we don't have those. Not yet.
Right.
So midday, while none of the events were taking place, I was like, all right, let's go see what they've got. And I've got myself a pack of gummies, and because I can't smoke. That's just me.
Gummies is like a dangerous thing, though, man. You never know how much is in them, especially in America. America doesn't have regulations.
Right. So I don't drink, and I don't do any marijuana or anything if I'm working. So once the day is over, game on. But mostly because I knew I was going to be A, not in my own bed, B, not in my own city, C, in front of a lot of people multiple days in a row. I was like, I need to get some sleep. So that was my goal. I'm going to get some gummies so that at the end of the night, I can pop a gummy and get a solid 8 hours. So the gummies come in a certain number. So I was kind of like, well, I want to, at the end of the trip, it's time to go back to the airport. I was like, I don't want to throw them away. Like I spent good money on these.
No.
I was like, here is one tip for the nerd business owners. Do yourself a favor, spend the money, fill out the forms, go do what you got to do, but get TSA pre-check.
Right. Yes. Definitely.
It is 100% worth it. After using it one time, I can tell you it is 100% worth it because
especially
they don't care what's in your
bunch of gummies.
Because they don't care what's in your pockets. They really don't. Now, typically when I fly, I get because I used to work while I was going back to school, I worked at a local liquor store. And also while I was going to school, I ended up transitioning and working for a local distillery. So I got really comfortable with alcohol and large quantities and high proof alcohol. So normally when I would fly, I know that the TSA rules allow two 50 milliliter mini bottles. As long as they're all plastic, you can get those through security, no problem. So I would go and get myself some high proof, usually rum, and I would put those in my toiletry bag, go through security. Once I'm through security, you go to one of those little kiosks, get yourself a 20 ounce of whatever, take a big sip out of it, put your mini bottles in, put the cap back on, turn it upside down. The phosphorus will naturally blend it. By the time you get on the plane, you've got your cocktail ready to go. So that's been my go-to for a long time. But now I go to LA and get myself some gummies. I'm like, okay, well, I just got to be okay if they say, hey, look, you got to throw that away. Okay, fine.
Right.
I go through security. They're just like, yeah, sure, have a good flight. They're like, actually, we're going to need you to take off your belt. I was like, oh, okay, belt's fine, but the drug's in my pocket, no problem. Okay, great. Sure, yeah, whatever you want. Here, keep the belt. Just keep it. I don't care. Anyways, I get through security. I go to the gate. I look at, I've got the app on my phone, tells me, my gate, seat number, when we're taking off, when we're landing, the whole thing. So I'm looking at my phone and say, okay, 35A, great. Let's head to the gate. 35, great. I sat down. Okay, all right. I'm here a little bit early because I'm, rather be early than late. I'm sitting there. I was like, you know what? We're taking a red eye. Let's just go ahead and pop a gummy. I pop the gummy. And I sit there, I start, scrolling on my phone. I took a bunch of pictures over the event. So I start posting some pictures to Instagram and whatnot. Slowly it starts to sink in. I'm, feeling pretty good. Okay. Getting closer to takeoff. And I start looking at the gates and I go, Guatemala City. No, that's not where I'm going. I look at another gate that says Colombia. No, that's not where I'm going. I'm going to Atlanta, right? Yeah, I'm going to Atlanta. And that's when I realized that the number I was looking at on my phone was not the gate number. It was my seat number. I was at the wrong gate. And now I'm high as a kite, trying to get to the other end, of LAX.
Oh no, LAX of all places. Motion.
Just, I gotta get there. I get there. I get to the gate right as they say final boarding call, and I'm like, okay, great. We stuck the landing. Good. We're gonna make it to Atlanta.
Hey there, YouTuber. Are you enjoying this interview we had with Todd? That's great. Well, I quickly just wanted to hop in and say two things. First, leave us a review if you haven't already on Apple Podcasts or somewhere else, wherever you found this. And given that it's on YouTube, go ahead and leave a comment. That also works. The second thing is, I highly recommend you go in, check out at least, and join our board of nerdpreneurs, because there you not only get this entire episode and it's like 3-hour length, but you also get access to a lot of other full interviews that we had that have a lot of other nerdy business advice and fun nerdy jokes. And also, one of the cool things that we did recently, if you've ever seen the movie Dungeons and Dragons from 2000, then you really got to check out what we did. There's a teaser version of it that I'll put in the description, but there's a full 3 to 4 hour version where Chris and I watched the entire Dungeons and Dragons movie from 2000s and we pick it apart. I mean, if you've seen that movie, you know it's not the best. So we pick it apart and all of its flaws, and we just have a blast at the end of it. So go ahead, check that out. And lastly, say hi to us on Twitter or Instagram. Let us know that you're enjoying what we're doing, or if you have any feedback for us. We're always happy to say hi to folks. Okay, let's get back to it.
Yeah, I really do love a lot of the things you've said, and your stories are fantastic. I mean, it's so nice actually listening to you. It's just like so entertaining. I get so lost in your stories that I'm like, right, okay, questions. All right, podcast, here we go. Let's do this. And
do consider myself a storyteller.
Yes, well, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And there's something that's really cool that I just want to double down on that you've mentioned. You've mentioned kind of 2 points juxtapositioned nicely together, and that is to play business. We were talking, and this was like a little bit ago, but we were play business, get into contracts. It's okay, take that leap, but don't take a blind leap. Take a educated and informed leap. And I think
calculated risk.
Yeah, calculated risk. It is so important. There's the Vulcan, you got to have that logic. There's got to be a thread of evidence and things that are going to help you make sure that you stick the landing as best as you can. So there's this Captain Kirk leap of faith going on here. So exactly. I think that is super important for anybody, no matter where they are in their business, especially new nerdpreneurs that are just starting out and they're like, oh my gosh, I loathe the day that I have to sign a contract. And some people are thinking, I can't wait to sign a contract with a big someone and then like, everything will be taken care of. But like, really, will it? Or will you have more problems than you expected? So I think it's a great point of people be willing to take that leap, but also just make sure you read the paperwork, and have someone more qualified to do it too.
Well, it's look, if you've got a mind for legal documents, more power to you. But it's not hard to find someone. Like, open a freaking phone book, man. Like, Google attorney in my area. That done.
Yeah, be willing to get uncomfortable with stuff like that, right? Like, if you don't know the answer, figure it out. Like, we've never lived in a place or a time where everything is more figure outable than now, right? Like in our pockets, we have literally almost all the information we could ever need to solve any issue or learn any skill that we ever needed in life, or at least enough to get us rolling, to get us going, you know? And I always say, like,
let's put it into perspective. In your pocket right now is a better computer than they used to get to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So freaking use it, man. It's not hard. Open up a browser, start typing. You'll figure it out.
And there's a lot of reason, like, and I liked what you said there, Frank, actually, too, about it's, you know, there are going to be, some people would be so stressed about, say, signing a contract because of the potential mistakes or problems that could come out of that. And I think there's a weird, especially as people start to move through success, there's a weird obsession around holding on to the problems they currently have in a fear about getting into problems they don't understand. And I always say, and I've talked to Frank about this many times, about like, what is the next level problem we actually want to be tackling? Because, you know, if we have a problem around, say, like getting a podcast guest, that is a problem of a small podcast, for example. But if you get to the next level, it's like, you know, how do we do this amazing interview with this person who's only going to give us 15 minutes, right? Like, that's a very different problem.
Right.
And that's a better problem, I would say. You know, so up-leveling your problems and being willing to step into a place where you don't know the answer, because that is the next stage of success, is you don't know how it's going to work. You just have to figure it out.
Yeah. I actually have a story along those lines if you've got time for another story.
Heck yeah. Maybe one more. We go into random rolls after that, because I think
all right.
Yeah, so we're in that.
I started the podcast, and you know, like a good business person, you know, right after you kind of establish your product, you want to get it out there. Easiest way to get it out there, social media. It's free. Just go ahead. So I started setting up, you know, Facebook, Instagram. I started setting up the Twitter. While I was setting up the Twitter, you know, it gives you those suggestions of, hey, here's some people you should probably follow. So I start scrolling. I go, well, this is a Star Trek thing. I'm going to look for Star Trek folks. And so I hit, you know, a couple of, you know, high profile Star Trek actors. I'm like, okay, you know, let's also hit like NASA, and let's hit a couple of astronauts and things like that. So as I'm going through, I find the actor Spencer Garrett. And I don't know if you recognize the name right off the bat. Spencer Garrett is a character actor who's been working in the industry for 30 plus years, 33, 35 years, something like that. He's one of those guys who's just been in everything. If you pull him up, you'll be like, oh yeah, of course, Air Force One, or oh yeah, you know, this other project, like tons of stuff. He was on a very pivotal episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation called The Drumhead. He was also in an episode of Star Trek Voyager. So I was like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. And he was, you know, he's been in other movies that I've liked too outside of Star Trek. So I hit follow. And I keep going. A few minutes later, he follows me back. Really? Okay. So I was like, okay, I shifted into like PR mode. And so I was like, okay, he followed me back, which means he's online right now. So I go in, I send him a message. Hey, thank you so much for the follow. If you'd like to come on for an episode, we'd love to have you. He messaged me back immediately and says, yeah, let's do it. I was like, and then it sank in of like, oh, I am ankle deep on this podcast. I have no idea what to do with this legendary character actor. Like, what the hell am I going to do? And I didn't talk to him for a year. I was just like, okay, I'll get back in touch with you. And eventually I did get back in touch with him. But when I did, you know, you mentioned those next level problems of, hey, I can't wait to have these problems. So on my podcast, Computer Resume Podcast, I do a very specific thing. We are covering the entire franchise in chronological order. If you've been listening long enough, you'll know that there are some episodes where we don't do that. A lot of that I owe to Spencer Garrett, because when I said, hey, I'm covering the franchise in chronological order, he's like, let's just do a career retrospective. Like, oh, that's not something I'd planned for. But I saw this as an opportunity. So I went, you know what? That's a great idea. Let me hammer out some notes. You got an email, I can send you the notes and all that stuff. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So we exchanged contact information. And I did up a whole thing of his career, but through the vein of like genre and sci-fi and pop culture that I felt would align with my audience. So now when I talk with Star Trek actors, I can say, hey, we can do a quote unquote regular episode where we talk about an episode of Star Trek, or we can do a career retrospective. And I'm far down the line enough now, and I can even say, or we can play a game. We can play a Star Trek game, or I can do some Star Trek trivia with you or something like that. So I took that problem, that quote unquote problem, and turned it into, now I've got more weapons in my arsenal to create more of my product with a wider range of guests, because I had to learn, oh yeah, they're not Star Trek fans necessarily. They're actors. So they want to talk about acting and their career and working with people and creative endeavors, not necessarily like, what's the combination for Kirk's safe in his room? You know, like they don't want to, that's not their thing. So, you know, understanding your audience, but also understanding your collaborators and your peers and other people that you're going to work with is very, very important, because you're going to take your art is malleable. So you got to be able to sort, if you want this, okay, we got to figure out how to get this round peg into this square hole. So you got to be able to finesse it a little bit and be able to say, you know what, I can do that. It's not what I normally do, but let me apply my professionalism and my studious nature and habits, what you want to do, and let's collaborate. We've talked about collaboration tonight and how important that is to be able to work with somebody.
Right.
Let's work this and make it work not only for me, but for you as well. And that's big when you have somebody on a podcast, again, at least in my experience, is the last part of my podcast I give to the guest. And I know you guys do it too. It's a wonderful habit for podcasters. Like, hey, this person has done you a favor by coming on your show to give you content. It needs to be beneficial to them. That was a lesson I learned from my buddy Gary and working with the wrestlers and all that. They want to promote. They're coming on your show, yeah, to have fun and yeah, to have a nerdy conversation or whatever. But at the end of the day, you also want it to be beneficial for them to come on your show. And if they see that it's beneficial, in addition to having a good time, they'll be inclined to do it again. And that's, you know, and then you lather, rinse, repeat. So anyways, enough soapbox. Let's roll some dice, fellas.
Yeah, so we're gonna jump into random rolls. This
I've got a D20. Do you want me to roll it?
Well, actually,
D100. Actually,
do you have a D100
questions that we go
I've got a
through?
D100.
Okay, great.
Are you kidding? Like I'm a decent DM. I've got a D100.
Okay, I wasn't sure the level of nerd we had. So,
all right, 97.
Is artificial intelligence going to take over humanity?
Yes. Next roll. Here we go.
This is perfect.
Are you kidding? You're talking to a Star Trek nerd. Absolutely.
I was gonna say, you've been waiting for this moment for your whole life, probably.
Fellas, I've had that one locked and loaded, man.
I gotta say though, like just chatting with ChatGPT and stuff, we're doing a Star Trek game right now, tabletop RPG game, and I was like, I kind of want to run a game now just so that you can have ChatGPT be the computer, because you can legit type in, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to act as if you're the Star Trek computer right now, and it will do it. And it does a pretty surprisingly great job of coming up with Star Trek jargon and complications and challenges and all sorts of stuff like that. When you say like, hey, we'd like to tell us the tachyon readings on this whatever planet, and legit just like types up a bunch of stuff of computer Star Trek-y gibberish that sounds amazing. So highly recommend people try that.
Are you guys playing through Modifus, the Star Trek Adventures?
I can't.
Can't read it.
Oh yeah, that's one of the starter characters.
That's the starter character, right? Yeah.
I modified the Andorian security chief.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did a JPEG where I took a picture of John Cena and I put him in a Starfleet uniform, colored his face blue, his hair white, gave him antennas, and I became Lieutenant Commander Folos and D-Leave. So I was always, I run in there and I stab him with my Ushantor. And they're like, Todd, there's 15 Romulans with disruptor rifles. That's not a good idea. Okay. I also punch them in the face. Like, no, you can't do that. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Listen, one of those idiots bought John Cena's album. That idiot is on your show right now.
Oh my gosh. Where's that question in our D100? Oh my gosh.
You paid for it? Isn't that on YouTube?
A hard copy. I had the CD and the jewel case. Yeah, come on, man.
Wow.
That
fan. Is a level of Cena fan I am not. But he is great in Suicide Squad and that other one.
He is.
What is it called?
Peacemaker.
Yeah. He did a movie. Oh God, I'm going to say like Wedding Friends or Vacation Friends. Yes. I think it's called. He has such a great turn to camera that on my first viewing of that, I actually paused it, rewound it, and watched it again. I don't like if I'm watching it if I watch a movie for the first time, let's go all the way through. That his turn to camera was so good. And I looked at my wife, I was like, that man knows how to work the camera. Like he's been doing it WWE for such a long time, and he understands working a crowd, he understands working the mic, he understands working the camera, and those are three very specific skills that you're lucky if you get proficient at one of them, and he is a master of all three, and I have the utmost respect for John Cena. Hearing him go back and say, you know what, I remember giving The Rock a bunch of shit for not wrestling while doing films. Now I get it. I understand why films are very, very difficult. And for him to go back and be like, you know what, I was absolutely wrong. And knowing how hard Rock works, and for John Cena to be like, yeah, I was wrong, dude. Sorry. It shows he's got a good head on his shoulder.
Yeah, it does.
100%.
Very thick neck.
There's a really good YouTube video of him and oh gosh, I'm forgetting the comedian. He was in Suicide Squad as well. Comedian from Saturday Night Live. He temporarily dated Kim Kardashian.
Pete Davidson.
Pete Davidson. Yes, the two of them are doing a YouTube bit where they review like random exercise equipment that were bought off online, and like they're totally different takes, and they're both comedians about it, and then Cena will like end it off like, actually this is total garbage, I wouldn't use this, or he's like, I could see including this in a workout, it's pretty pointless, I don't need to spend the money on it, but I might try it once or twice until it breaks, and they're both a really good duo.
Anyway, he's got a great sense of timing, which for comedy is absolutely essential. And I could go off on another tangent about John Cena and wrestlers working in comedy. But anyways, we're short on time as it is. Let's go for another role here, fellas. 26. 49.
49?
Yep, 49.
Okay. You get to hunt one X-Men with Predator. Who do you hunt?
Oh God. Okay, if I'm engaging in a hunt, with the Predator, like the Predator alien.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we have teamed up. He has put the little mark on my cheek,
100%.
given me like a spear. Yeah.
You got your own shoulder cannon. You're all set.
Okay, which I love the Predator franchise, so this is perfect for me. But we're hunting an X-Men.
Yes.
Ooh. Okay, so you got to rule out anybody with telepathy because they're
not gonna win.
Yeah, they're not gonna win. Invisibility, probably not the best idea either, although we can turn invisible, but our like natural invisibility versus tech invisibility, natural is going to win every single time.
100%.
That's just science, fellas.
Yeah.
So you also got to take away anybody with phasing ability and anybody with flight.
So
because you might be, yeah, super speed is out as well. So I think right off, yeah. So if we're hunting an X-Men, Bobby Drake, maybe. You got to catch him before he phases into ice, though. You got to catch him in natural form.
Assuming he knows how to do that in the time that you are hunting him, because if he's younger, he doesn't know how to turn into pure ice yet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but I think if I had enough time to research it a little bit more off the top of my head, I'd say Bobby Drake. You might be able to snag Rogue or Gambit.
I feel like Rogue, you'd have no shot. She'd be so
devastating.
And if she's the animated version, she can fly.
Yeah. Exactly. If we're also talking about, Gambit, if we fire something, if he gets his hands on it first, it's coming right back at you.
Yeah, so, with an explosive.
Yeah. I feel like your best bet is with somebody like Bobby Drake. Yeah, I'll stick. Final answer, Bobby Drake. Yeah, give me some rapid fire, fellas.
All right. I gotta
get in the zone. Okay.
So I am gonna hit you with a couple quick ones. Normally we alternate, but I want to hit you with a couple quick ones here. So normally I ask Star Trek or Star Wars, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer on that. So I decided to create some custom ones for you. So I'm going to give them to you real quick here. Which is your favorite Star Trek villain?
I gotta go Khan.
Okay, favorite.
No. Oh shoot. It was Peter Weller's character in the last big thing in Enterprise. It was the episode Demons and Terra Prime. He was the leader of the terrorist organization Terra Prime. I've actually gone on record as saying he's better than Khan because he was out for a bigger end game. Khan was out for revenge, which you're out for a revenge against one man, as opposed to this guy who's looking to he's in his mind, he's out to save the planet, which, there's a bunch of implications there. But yeah, I can't remember the character's name, but it's Peter Weller's character from Demons and Terra Prime at the end of season 4 of Enterprise.
All right.
That rapid enough?
Yes, that's perfect. All right. How about this? Fave Star Trek movie?
That's going to be Generations. Yeah, Generations.
Generations. Kirk and Picard.
With Kirk and Picard.
Yeah. Nice. I watched it around my birthday with Wrath of Khan, and they actually go really well together.
Nice.
All
right, favorite Vulcan.
Ooh. To be honest, I'm gonna say T'Pol. Like, Spock is a great character, and we get to see a lot of stuff happen with Spock over the decades. But T'Pol, we get a very specific Vulcan-human interaction at a very specific point in human history, and she dealt with a lot more heavier material, in my opinion, than Spock did. So yeah, I'm going to say T'Pol.
I actually really appreciate that answer because the Enterprise show did a very good job at showing the delicate dynamic and politics between the Vulcans and humans. And I was like, okay, this is something this show does very well that you don't get to see. The closest thing we got was Deep Space Nine at that time. And it wasn't even really the Vulcans. It was all the other empires and whatnot.
An absolute travesty that show ended after 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Best.
That's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, I know. I'm really trying not to dive on it.
I know.
All right. Who is your favorite non-Starfleet character?
Oh man.
Nice.
Ooh, I gotta go. I'm gonna say Guinan.
Oh
God!
Yeah, I'm gonna say Guinan. You know why?
Because you like to piss everyone off.
well, yeah, probably. I'm gonna say Guinan because Picard was a very important character to me growing up. He was the calm and steady, reassuring yet stern voice that I needed as a young man. And who did he turn to? Perspective from the bartender. And she was always able to bring him back down. She was always able to put his feet firmly on the ground. And I really, really respect that. And to be honest, that's kind of what you need as a creative. You need somebody who's going to ground you, because you're going to have these big ideas, but then like I said, I could not do my show without my wife, Kat. I could sing her praises easily for another hour, but she is my glue. She's my rock. She keeps my feet on the ground, and you absolutely have to have that.
I actually love Guinan. I misunderstood. I thought you were talking about the character from Deep Space Nine. She's like the prophet, or she's the wannabe prophet.
Kai Wynn?
Yes, I thought you said Kai Wynn, and I was like, what? Why
she's
do
such
you
a good
like
villain, though?
She makes my skin crawl. And I was like, why is she your favorite?
Umbridge.
Keep in mind, fellas, she's played by Nurse Ratched. Yeah. Like, she went in for a very specific job, and as much as we hate her, it's because she's so good at her job. She knocked it out of the park. So looking at her from a character perspective, yes, she's terrible. We hate her.
Did a great
job. From a performance and production perspective, she was the tops. Hate that she passed away, but you know what? She was amazing.
She was so good. She and Ducat. Yeah. Oh my God. Talk about some great chemistry. She and Ducat, and then also Kira and Odo. Like, wow. I have never seen such an amazing romance, Kira and Odo, on any TV show.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And to be honest, to mix up a couple characters you just mentioned, Kai Wynn and her condescension to Kira was just, every time they talked, I was just like, just fucking punch her, Kira.
Yes!
Just fucking punch her. Who cares? Just punch her. You're the major on this ship. Just fucking punch her.
Yes.
Oops. Pushed her out of an airlock. Sorry.
Oh God.
Accidents happen.
It would have been so good watching that. I mean, instead we watch, the slow fall, of her, thanks to Ducat and whatnot. Wow.
All right, next one. Hit me.
I actually want to ask the classic timeless question: favorite captain.
Okay, I'm actually going to ask you to clarify that. Favorite captain, or who I think is the best captain? Because that is not necessarily the same answer.
Ooh, I really want to hear both. I really want to hear first the standard, which is your favorite captain that currently is captain, and then who captains.
So raised on Picard, and I just finished singing his praises. He was the voice I needed as a young man. So he is my captain. He is not the best captain. That title goes to Janeway, hands down. And here's why. Her ship was not meant to be out that far for that long. Half of her crew wanted her dead before she left space dock. She not only integrated a member of the Borg into her crew, but she successfully integrated Borg technology into her ship. Risky game to play. And for all of the cowboy cavalier dealings where she had to sort of fudge the prime directive on more than one occasion, for all that they went through, he still got everybody home. Picard's on the flagship with a crew that equates to Superman. Like,
yeah,
they don't have problems. Like, she doesn't have backup, and half her crew is Maquis. Like, and she survived that. Yeah, of course they couldn't give her an admiral's pip fast enough when she got back to Earth. Here, Admiral, here, just take it. Just put it on your collar.
So
I am satisfied. Thank you.
Same question, but favorite first officer and best first officer.
Okay, so you need for your captain, you need someone who you play off of. You have to have, it's got to be the yin and the yang. You absolutely have to have both.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Kirk, for all that he got into, was truly grounded by Spock. Picard is an interesting character because of his relationship not only to Will, but to Wesley.
Mm-hmm.
There is a theory out there that Picard, Will, and Wesley are actually the same man at 3 different times in their life, which is why you get some of the best interactions between those 3 characters. Kira is so great because she's, again, coming as a survivor of a war where she knows nothing but war. But she's great next to Sisko, who's approaching this as a father, who's approaching this as, I have to preserve peace for my son. So that's the great dynamic there. I could keep analyzing all of them, but let's get to the answer of the question. When I played Fantasy Draft, where if you guys are familiar with fantasy sports at all, or at least the concept, we did the same thing on my show where I had 3 guests and the 4 of us did a fantasy draft with all Star Trek characters.
Oh, that sounds so fun. I've never heard of this.
It was a lot of fun. It was really great. So I chose as my first officer, Bill Riker, because I felt he was a good combination of Kirk and Picard in a first officer. And I think Frakes is doubling down with his performance in Picard season 3 right now, because we are still seeing that rough and tumble guy, but now he's a dad. Now he's a husband. So it's kind of that focus has shifted a little bit. It's still there, but it's matured and it's grown. So he's still kind of, he's down for rough and tumble, just like Kirk was, but he's also smart like Picard, but now he's got life experience. So now I think he's the triple threat. So I got to go Will Riker.
That is the correct answer.
Oh, so that was who I think. That is my first officer. Who do I think the best first officer is?
Yeah.
I think I'll go with Spock, because not only was he a great, flip side of the coin to Kirk, but he had just as many questions about the human experience. So as he is advising, he is also learning and growing. And we see that throughout the decades, to a point where he even gets to impart his own wisdom to himself in the Kelvin timeline. So there's my answer.
Nice.
Alien or Aliens?
Oh God, they're two
very different. I know.
Yeah, you're talking Ridley Scott versus James Cameron. You're talking about a think piece versus an action movie. Those are apples and oranges, fellas. I gotta say, I have grown to appreciate Alien more, but I think Aliens is so much more accessible. If you're talking about a first watch, you kind of need to go Aliens because everything that happens in the first one, you see the ramifications on Ripley's face. And she talks about her crew and she's giving the briefing to the Marines. Now, do you get all of the gravitas of everything that happened in the first movie? No, but again, you're talking about a bunch of minors. You're talking about a bunch of people who didn't really stand a chance against the xenomorph. Truly. Now you've got some bad hombres, to quote the movie. You've got some bad hombres, and they fall like flies. It is very easily accessible. You've also got the added layer of danger because of Newt. Now Ripley's not just trying to protect herself; she's got to protect Newt as well. So you're seeing the Queen alien versus, it's not Newt's mother, but definitely a surrogate mother figure. It's mom versus mom. That is a brutal fight. There are dudes everywhere who are just like, yeah, I'm not getting in between two moms fighting. Not going to happen. If I gotta come down on one or the other, I think I gotta go Aliens. Unfortunately, Aliens. I do respect the hell out of the first one. I love that franchise as a whole, but
I would agree with you on that one for sure. Well, Todd, this has been so awesome. And I got to ask, where can people find you, listen to your podcast, see your comedy, and any other stuff you want to plug?
Yes, absolutely. So as I've mentioned a couple times, I am on Cinema Shock, where we cover cult and genre film history. We take a filmmaker and we usually cover a good chunk of their career, usually something that aligns with the story of their life and work. We actually just finished a series on Sam Raimi not too long ago. Before that, we also covered James Cameron. We covered everything from Terminator to Avatar. So I'm all set in terms of James Cameron. Our very first series that we did, we covered the collaborations between George Romero and Tom Savini. So anyways, we get into the nitty gritty. Like we really dive deep on these filmmakers and the stories behind the stories. And you can find that on all of the socials at cinema_shock. You can find all of the episodes and our merch at cinemashock.net. If you're a big Star Trek fan, you can find my show, the Computer Resume podcast, wherever you get podcasts. We are covering the entire franchise in chronological order for fans new and old. Right now, we have finished Enterprise, and we are about halfway through. No, where are we? We're in Discovery. I think we're between season 1 and 2 of Discovery. We've also covered the pilot episode. We've covered short treks. We are also incorporating comic books if they tie to an episode or a film. We've had discussions with actors. We've had discussions with comedians, Lego builders, tattoo artists. If you like Star Trek and you have the means to watch an episode, odds are I've asked you to be on my show. So, fellas, get ready for some questions about coming on my show.
For sure.
Yes.
But yeah, you can find Computer Resume podcast. As I mentioned, you can find it anywhere you find your podcast. You can find it on all of the socials at Computer Resume. A lot of people call it Computer Resume. I did a horrible job of picking my name. But yes, at Computer Resume on all of the socials. If you're looking to find my stand-up comedy stuff, pictures of my food, pictures of my dog, pictures of old cars, you can follow me on all of the socials at Mr. Todd A Davis, spelled just like it sounds, at Mr. Todd A Davis on all of the socials. And I'm available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd for the movie fans out there, as well as D&D Beyond. So, yeah, That's where I'm at, fellas. That's where you can find all my stuff. Everything except my social security number.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Todd. This has been so great. And as always, everybody, keep it nerdy.
Before you leave, please take a second and help this show grow, whatever that means to you, whether it's a review, following us on Twitter, Instagram, here on YouTube, or if you tell a friend, because, I mean, if you think about it, podcasts primarily grow by telling friends. Or you can go over to our Board of Nerdpreneurs on our Patreon and check out what we have there. Not only do we have the full interviews of all our interviews accessible there, but we've got some other fun content as well. And of course, we love to shout out to our patrons, such as Kinchi, Aaron, Glenn Smythe, and Anthony Antonellis. Thank you so much for the 4 of you being a part of this journey for us. However you help us grow is greatly appreciated, so thank you. And as always, keep it nerdy.